Well, I will speak in English, don't be disturbed. But usually when I speak about Roma, I don't need any paper or something like that, and I do it without any protection. But because my English is very, very dramatic, and because I don't want to change the weather this evening in Bucharest, I will read my communication. It will be a short communication about the Roma migration from Romania to the western part of Europe, and especially two countries which are, in my opinion, quite similar concerning the arrival of Romanian Roma. That means Belgium and France. So I will read it, and sometimes I will give some examples. In fact, you can understand my communication regarding two former communications. One this morning with the Quarterary beggars, and the other at the beginning of the afternoon with Martin Oliveira communication regarding especially the Roma identity. So my paper will focus on the presentation of some Roma migrations trajectories from Romania to France and Belgium. Contrary to what is commonly accepted, Roma in migration are not, for me, an homogeneous group of migrants who leave their country, by example Romania, to escape from extreme poverty and discrimination, by example. The examples I will give to you and I will present this afternoon show, on the contrary, a variety of situations, knowing, in fact, that economic considerations underlie all these migrations, but even if there are other causes, such as health problems or human rights violations, but in fact, the migration process is really very more complicated, and it's why I would like to propose you a summary about the different migrations which came from Romania to western part of Europe since the Second World War. So it's possible to distinguish, but it's always a problem of distinction, but it's possible to distinguish those migrations, those among these migrations which took place before the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Romanian Revolution of 1989, those that followed the fall in the 90s, and finally those that take place since the beginning of the 21st century in the context of the integration, of the Romanian integration in the Western Europe. And especially in the 91st century, those migrations are more or less linked to growing economic difficulties affecting all Romania, and especially all the people who in Romania, not only Roma, but all the people who in Romania fail to qualify for the inclusion in the modern economy. So now there are a lot of people having a lack of formation, of schooling and so on, who try to have a more interesting life during some months or some years in the western part of Europe. I will pass very quickly on the first migration just after the Second World War and before the revolution, the so-called Romanian Revolution. There were just a few hundred people in the French territory and in the Belgian territory too at the end of World War II. They came from Vienna, especially from Vienna, which was a place after the Second World War where a lot of people without who have lived in camps, by example, were placed, were directed before coming into our countries. And but after just these few people were reached 20 years after by other kinds of Roma, and especially during years and years in the 80s. At that time, it was fairly easy to obtain political refugee status for the nationals of communist countries because of the Cold War. And most Roma who arrived in that context integrated without any other kind of process. They integrated the French or the Belgian society, sometimes by themselves, because they could integrate themselves by work and so on, but sometimes also because they were helped by some NGOs and by the church, the Catholic Church especially. These people were isolated, or they came in nuclear families, just father and mother and one or two boys or girls. They were, in general, integrated in the Romanian society at that time. So they could work here and so on, but they wanted to go outside because of threat of any problems. I don't really know exactly what, but they came in the western part of Europe and integrated without any kind of problems. Their children born there in France or Belgium acquired the French or Belgian citizenship and did, by example, at that time it was the case, they did their military service in the French or Belgian army, and so on. They were Belgian or French citizen, not connected with local Belgian or French Roma, by example. Those integrated migrants, I would say, integrated migrants, will sometimes actively renew the contacts with their family in Romania after the fall of the Ceausescu regime. And it was the case, by example, of an important Roma family here in Bucharest, where part of the sons stayed in France, were French, and wanted to find a way to receive, to buy some perfume and so on, which could be sold here in Romania, not only in Bucharest, but also in Pitești and so on, where they had little trade cases. So it was very interesting, this kind of communication. One flies outside Romania during a time, but there prepare himself, which knows, to come back in Romania or to help Romanian relatives when it could be possible. That was something which was never documented in the 90s, by example. Nobody spoke about that situation, but Romanian Gypsy Roma here in Bucharest knew the question. So the migration, second migration, taking place in the 90s is mainly the fact of former corporate, if I say like this morning, so former Roma nomads who were obliged to settle during the 60s in Romania. There was a law in 63 which obliged the Romanian nomads to establish themselves in villages or in towns. But those people maintained cultural dynamic, preparing themselves to seize, I think, the opportunity of movement as it could arise. Those migrations began shortly before the fall of the Ceausescu regime, so very shortly before. They fit in waves of more general Romanian refugees. but especially people from the minorities, German and Hungarian minorities, who wanted to go back, to go out the country. And in that way, some Roma did the same and came in Germany or in Italy, or from Germany or Italy to the other Latin part of Europe, Belgium and France. So most of those so-called cultural who reached Western Europe at that time, in general, came from Transylvania, by example, Sibiu, but also Oradea and Arad. So those people were culturally connected, I could say, with the central Western Europe. And the main part of those people wanted to reach Germany, not after. They wanted to reach Germany. They stayed in Germany as far as they could, and after, some of them continued to Belgium or to France. That's the case of some families actually coming from the western part of Europe in Oradea. There were also other Roma who wanted to reach the Latin part of Europe, and from Timiș, especially from Timiș. There were people from Timișoara itself, but also from Getaia, for example. So they stayed in Italy, France, Belgium. Year by year, movement became more complex, and some Roma reached from France or Belgium, Great Britain, or Spain and Portugal, but not directly. Some of them came back from those countries on the continent, and in the continent, they moved from one country to one western country to the other. Today, it appears very difficult to get a clear idea of the magnitude of those migrations. But it seems certain that the implementation of some of these Roma is not taken for granted. They have a social capital accumulated among the local Gajé in western part of Europe. They have local new alliances created by wedding. There are some Roma who married their girls, by example, not with Romanian boys, Romanian Roma boys, but with local Roma girls or boys. By example, people coming from Yugoslavia, ex-Yugoslavia, and who are staying there till the 60s. So, also, their children go to school, those ones go to school, and actually they have lost their Romanian language, but they have received the local Gajé French or even Flemish, by example, in Belgium. So they become more and more distant with their Romanian relatives and stay more and more in a Western country. So I will come back to speak about people coming from this second migration wave, but I would like to speak just quickly about the third kind of migration, which include different kinds of Roma. There are first of all, urbanized Roma, some very intellectualized, who don't hesitate to work as, by example, masons, like workers, manual workers in Belgium, by example. There are others who turn into international businessmen it's very interesting to see that in Belgium, by example, in Brussels, not the Intercontinental Hotel, but the Hilton Hotel, just near the Botanic Palace, is a place where there are some Roma from Romania who are coming there and do trade with Western traders. It's unknown, but it's the fact. So, also there are musicians, some very popular in Romania itself, who try temporarily to travel in Western Europe. And by example, there is a case, well-known case of the Taraf, the Hajduk, which was managed by a Belgian manager, in fact. And some of those musicians perform under contract, but it's also a kind of migration, because between two official representations, they are on the street and they do like the more traditional street musicians. They play music, receive or don't receive money, but it's a kind of interesting things, because in that way they can improve the local communication, and they can see how they can be accepted or not by the Belgian or French citizen, for example. The most part of those new migrants of the third wave comes from the peasant world, having very few experience in moving and very little qualification to argue in a developed economy. Many have suffered discrimination in Romania or diverse social disadvantages. I have spoken about the lack of schooling and formation, but I have also to point that several families are in fact disintegrated families. So people having a lot of social problems and who come there. It's interesting to point that these so-called Roma peasants are unable to speak French, by example, after 2 or 3 years staying in Brussels or Paris or in another city. It was not the fact with the former so-called nomad Roma who spoke just the minimum, but you could speak in a local language. Well, in general, in this framework, several migration patterns can be identified. First of all, I will mention an unusual type of migration among Roma, which is linked to a personal project. It is the case of a friend, we will name it Ionel, who Ionel is an engineer originated from Brasov, and this engineer has he has never made any secret of his Roma origin. No, I know it's not the true name, but he exists. He has never made any secret of his Roma origin, but he doesn't want to ascertain it too. So for him, it's something normal. Is in his personal life. But this engineer has lived in Iraq, where he worked as member of the Romanian technical assistance in the country till '89, so during the communist regime. He was there in the technical assistance. He returned to Bucharest with the intention to seize an opportunity for a fresh start. And now he has just finished his career but during the 90s, he has been employed by a multinational oil company on the petroleum platform of Africa, in the Atlantic. You know, he is a Roma. It's not a mystery for him at the people who knows him, but it's only a personal way of integration which has been followed. And in general, Roma migration is a more collective affair. Various situations can be identified. Life in precarious shanty towns or squats is the most spectacular and most publicized, actually. When you can see any report about 5 minutes, okay. When you can see reports, media reports in France or Belgium, you can always see poor Roma and so on, who are completely neglected, living in poor conditions and so on. But it's only one part of the iceberg. In fact, there are a lot of other people who are not in that situation. It's by example interesting to notice that when possible, villages of Romanian villages, former Romanian villages, are recovering in the host country. And it is by example the case for a lot of families, of Roma families, originated from Sintana in near Turnul Severin, who gather in the town of Saint-Jos. Saint-Jos is a little town just near Brussels. And but they are in other parts of Western Europe too. For those people, the links are not broken with the municipality of origin, so they are completely connected with Sintana, by example, yet. But some people do a pendular movement between Brussels and Sintana, Belgium and Romania, and also with other relatives. We are in other parts of Europe, in other cities. They do new kinds of communications. On site, a collective social life is organized in Saint-Jos around the Romanian Pentecostal Church. People there are working with varying success, especially as traders, taxi drivers, mediators, municipal workers, not beggars. When it is possible, it's interesting from the ethnological point of view to point this. They break their apartment. Saint-Just is a poor little town just near Brussels. So their apartments are not very clean and so on. And so the Roma can adjust them, breaking some walls and so on to permit a collective way of life, you know. And so it's interesting. There are not, if you want, people who are just people obliged to move from one country to another. No, they have a project, and when they can do it, they manage the local situations to be as free as possible, you know. It's interesting also to notice that the communication between those so-called Roma peasants and the former court rural is not very, very easy. And I have just to propose an example to clarify the kind of communication between them. I will speak about Pavel. Pavel is actually a man of 60 years old. He was born in Arad and in a completely integrated Roma family during the communist regime. His father and after himself were kitcheners, but one of his uncles was a doctor in medicine. Another one was a pilot of the army and an airplane pilot. So they were integrated people, but after the revolution, himself and some other people decided to go to the western part. He arrived as a poor man, himself and some relatives in Brussels, was helped by the Catholic Church, helped by the same NGOs who were connected with Belgian Rroma. It is interesting to notice, to point that those so-called Belgian Rroma were in fact people originated from Arad, but 1 century before, they had the same family names than himself and his relatives, and they were helped by the same Gajé, but no the simple communication between them. They neglect them. Never my Pavel wanted to come in contact with those Roma who were formally integrated in the city and who were, in fact, and you can recognize it in the way of the previous communication of Martin. They followed 2 different histories. The so-called Belgian Rroma were people who moved the Austrian army in the 19th century, and the army was came in war with the Austrian army came in war with the Prussians in Sadova, was completely defeated, and those Roma continued simply to the west, arrived in Belgium and France in the same year in 1968 and stayed there. After, it was another process in liberal countries. During that time, Pavel and his family continued here to have another kind of situation. But being member of a family who has good communication knowledge and was integrated, first of all, in Romania and after in the western part, he could help the people, by example, who came from Sintana, and by example, he sold them the places where it was possible to beg, and also he permitted them to obtain some minority refugee statute, but always selling his service. And in fact, himself say those people are not, and it will be the after I stop. Those people from Sintana are not true gypsies. They are Pashrat Manush, even not gypsy, not Tzigan, Manush people are Pashrat, half blood. So, and himself said, and his relatives said, we are Chache Roma, not Romanian Rroma, Chache Roma. Okay, but at a wedding, a very interesting wedding, where one of his girls was married with a Romanian boy, Roma boy, originated from Cluj. There were a lot of people of the family coming from south of France